Hello again, welcome back everyone. LiquorHound here with you, and thank you for joining me once again for another spirit review video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of, well, I should say a new and old bourbon, um, because the brand new one is the Old Emmer Toasted Barrel from Total Wine. Using the Emmer wheat, so it's a wheated bourbon. That's an ancient grain, goes back 10,000 years to Egypt, but mostly used in like baking and pastas and flatbreads and stuff like that. But, you know, everybody loves wheated bourbons. Look at the Wellers. And so this line, the Emmer line out of Total Wine, has been doing, I think, really well. The low proof one, that's the tan label. I want to say it's like $40, and it's the lower 80s as far as proof. And then they came out with a cast strength one. That one runs about I think it's in the teens, 115, 116 as far as proof. I think it's 116. But that one's only $45. So I tell people all the time, if you're going to get an Emmer from the Total Wine line, probably the cast strength, because you can always add water. You can add an ice cube or something, but, you know, it's only $5 more. Well, I'm in Total Wine, and I see this one. Beautiful blue box. Of course, I'm not going to drink the box, but comes in a really nice box. Tall bottle. Price point at 119. That's a big jump. So I'm like, 119? You know, I'm going to need to taste this before I even think about buying it. Luckily, they had one open. I get to try it. And I'm like, you know what? I get a 10% discount because they were running a sale on their little Spirits Direct. And so I was like, okay, I'll go ahead and give it a shot. So this is why I'm going to share this with you. Now, as you can tell, bottle is heavily hit. And the reason is because not only did I share this with a lot of people, but I also wanted to get that oxygen in the bottle, because the one thing I've noticed about this Emmer wheat is it really changes with oxidation, with air in that bottle that's trapped. And so I have seen personally that when I first cracked this bottle, it was good. A few weeks later, it gets really good. And then it kind of roller coasters. I caught it at a point where it was kind of popping this really bright cherry that wasn't there at, initially. And I kind of wanted it to really level out before I gave it a review. So this bottle has been sitting open now for probably a good month, month and a half. That since they first came out, that's when I first got them. But a month and a half of just breathing. So I'm going to try and give you a good review on it so we can see where it ends up settling. All right. That's the thought on that one. Now, price point at 119 sounds steep. But I have seen them in Total Wines, at different Total Wines around the country, for only $99. So if you catch it at that $99 price point, and then hopefully they have that 10% off, that's going to be something to consider. Now the other one, the Henry McKenna 10-year-old. This one has been around forever. It goes back to the old arts and crafts bottles where they used to have the little felt on the front and the little copper coin hanging from the bottle. And those used to be about $20, $25. Fantastic old Heaven Hill bourbon. Leading up to 2020, we started seeing, of course, the change happens to the bottle. They go to the new labels and stuff, but they also lost, I think it was like screw tops, right? They lost screw tops, but the price point started going up. They started going up to like 45, yeah, about 45 right before 2020, maybe almost 50. They were hitting that point, and that was getting disappointing because this has been a really good staple for a lot of people. Now they are single barrels. That's one thing to keep in mind about single barrels, is they're not always great because every barrel is kind of different. But these were really solid go-tos at a lower price point with an age statement of 10 years. Now after 2020, you got the supply chain craziness, and all of a sudden we started seeing this disappearing off shelves. Matter of fact, here in Texas, this was gone for a good 2, maybe 3 years off shelves. It would only kind of pop in once a year or so, show up on a shelf, fly off, and then you wouldn't see it again for months and months. But here in 2024, I've started seeing a lot of this on Total Wine shelves. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to pick one up, even though the price point has now hit $80 on these. Oof, yeah, that's rough. $80 I feel is rough, but I mean, that's the current situation we're in. But I have seen these as low as $60. So you got to look around, check your mom and pop stores. You don't always have to hit the big chains, and see if you can find this at a lower price. Now, this one, again, 10 years old. This one technically is from 2023, but again, I just picked this up off the shelf here in Texas. I'll put all the details of everything in the description, so if you need to see any of that, check down there. McKenna 10. Oof, my goodness. Now this is freshly open. I just opened it right before I'm recording this video. The one thing I can say on the nose is it's really vibrant with heavy brown sugar, almost going into like blackstrap molasses in there with it. It's got a lot of, whenever I get like a red licorice and a lot of fruits popping on top of it, I almost go into this. It reminds me a little bit of an aromatic of what Play-Doh used to smell like. I know that doesn't always sound great, but I don't mind it when I get that because that's just telling me it's a really heavy red licorice with a lot of fruit. There is a good amount of baking spice in it. The cinnamon's there, little clove, light nuttiness, almost like almond slivers. But I can really pick up that really dense, almost going into a chocolate and an oak, chocolate oak on the back end. Let's taste it, see if it follows all that. First sip, always just checking viscosity, checking to see if there's transitions happening. Oh my goodness, that's a nice one. Okay, here we go, second sip. Medium high viscosity. It's really nice, rich mouth coating. Again, kind of lingers on the brown sugar. I will say right up there, there is a rush as the baking spice comes in. There's a little rush of almost a light, what is that? It's almost like a menthol, mint. It's not really mint, it's more on the menthol tone. Almost like a light acetone menthol. It's kind of pushing everything. So you get that big brown sugar, you got this kind of dark dried plum, maybe a little bit of like a little golden raisin in there, dried cherries. Everything seems kind of dried, not fresh and vibrant. It's darker. It's a deeper, more brooding bourbon overall. But there are the almond slivers. That's definitely in there. That kind of Play-Doh element that I was picking up on the nose is kind of on the palate. But again, on the palate, you can really pick out that it's red licorice. You start getting all those dried fruits that I was mentioning. Lots of oak and dark chocolate, shaved dark chocolate on the back end on this one. It really kind of gives you a good ride. And I think that's what surprised me when I initially tasted it was I'm always checking for that transition, and it really did kind of take a jump into the dark oak chocolate realm on the back end. It kind of has almost like a fudgy, brittle confectionery aspect to it. And while that kind of rush of spice with that little bit of menthol, and it's just a little bit, kind of rushes in, again, it kind of bolsters everything up that was already happening, and then it recedes, so you don't focus on it. But it is very leathery and dark. That's a dark, dark bourbon. So if you're looking for more of that brighter caramel, that old Forester where it's like brighter cherry and maybe light banana and caramel, that type thing, this is going to be heavy. This is more of what I remember a lot of older bourbons tasting like. This is definitely in that realm. Long, lingering finish. Oof. Okay. There's also that little bit of that menthol part. There's almost like a, sometimes those old Heaven Hills would get you a little bit of that machine oil, that little kind of old toolbox flavor. That's what's in there with that menthol. That's what's in there, and then the menthol backs off, and that even lingers. That kind of machine oil lingers onto the finish. I actually really like it, but I can see where if that's not your jam, it's not going to be it. Okay, Old Emmer Toasted Barrel. So this is a double-barreled Emmer bourbon. The new barrels The toasted barrels are going to add a little more depth, a little more of that hopefully marshmallow type component. But let's see. Yeah, it's really kind of flattened out, leveled out on the nose. To me, it's like a little more brown sugar than caramel, but it's definitely still in that spectrum of having caramel sweetness. This one's a little more in the mix. There's some nuttiness, but this one's more mixed. I pick up a little bit of peanut, little pecan, little apple cider vinegar in this one. I like that. Some citrus zest in there. Maybe a little bit of cherry apple. Yeah, a little cherry apple. The oak's not super dominant, but again, it's only probably, I'm guessing, 4 to, at max, probably 7, 8 years old. But let's go ahead and taste it. Mm. That's not bad. That's not bad. I'm noticing how it's very similar as far as how this one rich was, and it was mouth coating. This one's very mouth coating as well. On the palate, it's a little more, yeah, it's almost direct split on the palate as far as caramel brown sugar. You do get that kind of cherry, I would call this one like almost like a natural Bing cherry. And then there's also some, what is that? Citrus oil, almost like a little bit of orange oil, orange zest in it. Before it goes into that mixed nuttiness, that mixed nuts definitely show up on the mid palate. Yeah, very rich, good viscosity. Really nice and balanced because again, there's that brown sugar, the caramel, the kind of baked apples, that little fresh cherries in there, but it's not super bright right now. Like again, there was a point where that cherry was super vibrant. That was not my favorite spot for this one. You just have to give it enough time for it to really settle out. Bookish oak on the finish. When you get that old book kind of smell, along with a good resinous oak, that's there. That citrus oil, that orange oil that I was picking up is really nice complement. It kind of adds a little freshness and zing to kind of that darker baked apple and the cherry note. As it starts going into those mixed nuts, you start picking up that kind of depth before it really drops into that kind of bookish oak on that finish. You know, this one was a little more on the fudge brittle. And for me on this one, it's a little more like a toffee with the nuts on it. That's what this one is. Toffee with those fruits. Again, cherry, apple, a little bit of orange oil. But I love the way those kind of toffee nuttiness kind of shows up mid palate, along with a real light, nice, muted baking spice. It really rounds out, goes really nice on the finish. Overall, I'm very happy with this bottle. Again, there was points where I was not, but I think if you give it enough time, it really settles. And the one thing that I've told this to people, and they kind of, when they taste it, they can see it. People that have been drinking bourbon a long time. If anyone remembers the old Weller Antique 107s, and I'm talking not the paper labels, these are the kind of the rounded bottles. I remember back in the day when those rounded bottles were doing some single barrel picks. There was some really, really good ones. This, at its sweet spot, will remind you of some of those really good Weller 107 picks. It's not life-changing. It's not something that I would want to run out and go crazy to buy a bunch of these. No, no, no. You don't need to do that. It's not that good, especially at the price point. But if you're able to get one, I think you'll appreciate it. Okay, I'll say it like that. I think you'll appreciate it if you get one. And if you get it at a good price, even better. But I hope you enjoyed this video review. Again, these are straightforward, honest reviews because I am not sponsored by anybody. I do not get these bottles sent to me. It is only with the help of my patrons at patreon.com/LiquorHound that I'm able to continue self-purchasing these bottles to review for everyone. So if you can, join us over there so that you can get these videos ad-free. You're going to get them 2 weeks early so you can get out there and hopefully pick these up a little sooner. And you're going to get a complete big video library reviews of that never hit YouTube. And I think there's probably a good, I don't remember, it's probably a good 100 or so that's never been on YouTube. So join us over there if you can. You're going to get all that. And very, very reasonable on price. Again, I'm not trying to make money off this venture. I'm only trying to keep this channel alive so that you can help me fund these bottles to give you these reviews. But again, I appreciate each and every one of my viewers, regardless of platform. So keep leaving all those great comments, and I'll get to them just as soon as I can. Everyone have a great day, and cheers.